This morning, I would like to share with you two insights of Rav Soloveitchik, Zichron Tzadik Livracha, both relating to the same word, to the same phrase. And that phrase is one that we recite when we leave from a visit to Avelim, when we leave from Nichum Avelim. I will tell you that for me personally, since I've made Aliyah and discovered that here in Eretz Yisrael, it is just as common to use the Sfaradi words of comfort, which is Min Hashamayim Tinuchamu, may you be comforted by Shamayim. I've taken to using that instead of the traditional Ashkenazi words that we are all, of course, familiar with. But it is those words that I will focus on this morning. And that is, of course, HaMakom Yenachem Etchem, B'toch Sha'ar Avelei Tzion B'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you. But it's very odd. We use the phrase HaMakom. Maybe we don't stop to think about this. We don't say Hashem as in Ado Nai Yenachem Etchem. We don't say Elohim Yenachem Etchem, but HaMakom Yenachem Etchem. And it really is very strange. That name for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or at least the appellation, if it's not an actual name, but a descriptive, appears also in Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael, as in Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael. And suddenly we recite HaMakom Yira. So there too, we refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as HaMakom. We also refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as HaMakom in the Haggadah, where what appears to be, although that is not necessarily the case, an introduction to the Arba'a Banim, the four sons, we recite, and this too has made its way into many different tunes, many different songs, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu. So Rav Soloveitchik, and I've mentioned some of this before, has at least two, I'm familiar with two different insights or understandings of the usage of the word HaMakom in the Haggadah. We're not going to focus on the Haggadah this morning, as it is not Pesach time. May we soon see a new Geula in our day. But we're going to focus on the other two, on HaMakom Yirachem Yirach, that HaMakom, and of course, as we extend to Avelim, HaMakom Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar Avelei Tzion B'Yerushalayim. The first understanding that Rav Soloveitchik so beautifully supplies for us is that, according to him, the word has the exact opposite connotation that one would normally think. Generally speaking, we think of God as being omnipresent, and God is omnipresent, and God is everywhere. And the word HaMakom then would mean that God is everywhere. And even if I do not feel that God is here right now, I know that he's everywhere. And because God is everywhere, maybe that can comfort me in some way. So Rav Soloveitchik understands the term similarly, but really coming at it from the exact opposite end. And by that I mean as follows. Rav Soloveitchik, and by the way, I first heard this insight of Rav Soloveitchik from Rabbi Yosef Adler of Teaneck, New Jersey, the brother of OU's very own Rav Aaron Adler. And so Rav Soloveitchik explains as follows. He takes us to Tefillah, and particularly to Kiddusha. And there we recite two phrases back to back. Many of us, of course, if we attended Minyan this morning, recited them together with the Kahal this morning. We don't necessarily stop to think that these two phrases are actually polar opposites. We introduce Kiddusha, and then we recite Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzivakot, Milo Chol Haaretz Kivodo. Holy is God, the entire world is filled with his glory. And then we recite the phrase, Baruch Kivod Hashem Mimakomo. Of course, we're all familiar with these words. God is blessed from his makom, from his place. Rav Soloveitchik directs us to the speaker of each of these two phrases. Each of them, the first being Yeshayahu, and the second Yechezkel, had a nivuah. They had a mareh. They had a vision. They both were able to see and bask in the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whatever that may or may not mean. Keep in mind that every single person that ever had a nivu'ah, with one exception, and that's Moshe Rabbeinu, according to our tradition, their nivu'ah was always in a dream. So this is a chizayon, a mar'eh, a vision of sorts, but meaning in the form of a dream. And Yeshayahu reminds us, Rav Soloveitchik was living at a time which was glorious. And so he was able to view and to perceive HaKadosh Baruch Hu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's posse, if you will, his angels, saying, Melo chol haaretz kivodo. The entire world is filled with God's glory. Because that was the world at the time. That was the Jewish world at the time. But that was not so for Yechezkel. For Yechezkel, instead, and we end a haftarah that way, which we read, of his vision, Mar'eh Yechezkel, known as Ma'aseh HaMerkavah, Vatisa'eni ruach, and a wind or a spirit lifted me, Va'ashma acharai, and I heard behind me, or coming from behind, not Melochol Haaretz Kivodo, but rather, and it is a sharp contrast, but still one that can be soothing, it can be healing, and that is Baruch Kavod Hashem, blessed is God, Mimekomo, from wherever he may be. And explains Rav Soloveitchik, that is the meaning of the words HaMakom Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar Abelei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. That is the meaning of the usage of HaMakom Yerachem Alehem Yenachenu Kol Beit Yisrael. And that is that when somebody passes away, even an immediate relative, even a parent, which is simply the nature of the world, it hurts. It hurts badly, no matter who it is. It hurts, of course, even more when it's a sudden death of another relative beyond a parent, and it's not the natural course of events, and it's unexpected. It hurts as much when we are OUisrael and we are reeling. It hurts even more for the families, of course, of now the Chayalim and Chayalot, and before that, all of those that were massacred on Simchat Torah on October 7th. And Rabbi Soloveitchik explains so beautifully, just as Yechezkel gave voice to his feeling in expressing to us what he heard, the Malachim perhaps reciting from behind, that is Baruch Kavod Hashem Mikomo. That at times like this, we feel like God's not out there. We feel like God is nowhere. We feel like God has left the building and has zero interest in what is transpiring in the world, and specifically what is transpiring with these events now, with the Milchama, with the war, what is transpiring with Am Yisrael. And so, according to Rav Soloveitchik, the way he so beautifully explains, what Yechezkel heard, what Yechezkel was able to express is, Baruch Kavod Hashem mi bekomo. It may seem like he's not out there, but he is. God is out there someplace. I don't know where that place is. I don't know what God's role is in all of this. I don't really understand right now why this is happening and why it has to happen. But just the knowledge that God is mi mekomo, that he's out there someplace, can give me some sort of solace, explains Rav Soloveitchik, some sort of nechama, some sort of comfort. And so with that in mind, we wish nechama to all those that are suffering more closely than perhaps, and I don't want to speak for any of you, but than any of us here, on behalf of, or directing our words to all those that are suffering on a personal level, to the family that just the other day lost a chayelet bodeda, a lone soldier from Atlanta. It turns out that my mother is a dear friend of her aunt in Baka. HaMakom Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar Abelei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May God, who is out there someplace, even if we do not understand how and where right now, may just that knowledge that God is out there, that he is HaMakom in some place, be in some way words of comfort. The second explanation that Rav Soloveitchik gives to the word HaMakom, to the name HaMakom and its usage as we comfort Avelim, actually has a completely different twist. And that is based on the Gemara that compares and contrasts two different mitzvot. Two mitzvot that we are all familiar with, and two mitzvot that, if you are anything like me, have failed miserably when it comes to these two similar mitzvot. When our parents were alive or are still alive, it is very difficult as an adult in our own right, at least if not more difficult than it was as children, and that is honoring our parents. And so on one hand, and again, we're all familiar with the psukim. The Torah tells us, number one, kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. Honor your father and your mother. Similarly, and perhaps in contrast to that, and the Gemara does understand it as a contrast, we are told, we are commanded and bidden, ish imo ve'aviv tira'u, that a person must, I don't like to use the word fear, I think that be in awe or be awed by is a better translation and is more related to the connotation of the pasuk itself, that one should be in awe of their mother and their father, of their parents. And so the Gemara, in discerning the difference between these two, and there are many differences in the language, including the fact, which we're not going to focus on this morning, but when it comes to kibud, honoring, the father is placed before the mother. When it comes to morah, when it comes to awe, tira'u, the mother is placed before the father. There are several different contrasts and differences in the text itself. We're not going to get into that now. But rather, the Gemara tells us as follows, that when the Torah tells us, kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, it's referring to what we must proactively do, how we must actively engage in order to honor our parents. And so there are so many examples. The Gemara gives the following three, and there are more. Ma'achil u'mashkeh. One is to give their parents food. One is to feed them. One is to give them to drink. And it doesn't just mean when they need it, when they are no longer able to care for themselves. That's a separate mitzvah. But aside from that, in general, to offer our parents a drink when we're going to visit them. And I know that when I go to visit my mother, I sometimes fail miserably at this. I'll walk in her door, and of course, she'll offer me a drink. At some point during the visit, shouldn't I also say to her, Mom, can I make you a cup of coffee? Mom, can I prepare something for you to eat, or at least bring you something from your cabinet to eat? How often do I do that? Not often enough. But ma'achilu mishkeh, malbish uman'il, to dress them. And again, it doesn't just mean when a parent is no longer able to take care of themselves, but if one has the financial means and the parents do not, to provide for their clothing. Even when it's not just a question of financial needs, when we are with our parents, is there anything that I can get you? Can I get your coat for you? Can I put on your coat for you? Here, of course, right now in Eretz Israel, it's warm and nobody needs a coat, but we get the point. Machnisu motzi. Literally, we bring them in and we take them out. In other words, escort our parents out the door. Escort them or go to greet them when they come in the door instead of sitting on our sofa with our cell phones. And again, I'm speaking for myself. I failed miserably at this. We all know that this mitzvah is perhaps the most difficult to observe to its fullest and to pass this particular test. At least for me, I can tell you that I believe it is. When it comes to morah, when it comes to fear, or as I told you, I prefer awe, the Gemara explains this as being the exact opposite. Kibud is what we do, how we proactively honor our parents. Yir'ah, or morah, on the other hand, is what we mustn't do, what we may not do. And so the Gemara gives the following examples, and let's focus on the first example here, as Rav Soloveitchik does. Lo yeshev bi mikomo, that a person may not sit, in their father's or mother's seat. One should not sit in their chair. If your father or mother has a special chair, you do not sit there. Now, as an aside, there is a halacha that a parent can be mochel, that a parent can dismiss their own kavod. And so therefore, for example, as a boy growing up, whenever we would have a birthday party, especially the family birthday party, so whichever one of us children had a birthday that we were celebrating, we got to sit in our father's seat because my father said it's perfectly fine. But barring that, it wouldn't be okay. Generally speaking, one is forbidden both literally and figuratively to sit in their parents' seat. Whatever jobs your parents are doing, that's for them to do. Whatever your parent does, that's for them. We don't dare try to, we can emulate their ways. We can certainly engage in certain activities with them, whatever it may be, but we don't dare sit in their place. We don't dare try to replace our parent. They have their place in this world. And a person should not speak in place of their parent. If your parents are in the middle of saying something, we should do our best to not interrupt, but beyond that, to not speak for them. Let them speak. We get the idea. To not contradict our parents. And if one does need to correct them because there is no choice, then obviously to do so only in a respectful way. But let's go back to the first example that's provided, as Rav Soloveitchik does. Lo yeshev b'makomo. And Rav Soloveitchik explains that that's exactly the meaning, or one of the meanings, behind this multi-layered name and appellation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaMakom Yinachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar Avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. HaMakom Yirachem Alehem Inachenu Kol Beit Yisrael. And Rav Soloveitchik explains again so beautifully as follows. These examples of Morah, of Ish Imo Va'aviv Tira'u, are when your parent is alive. When one's parent is alive, Lo Yeshev B'Mkomo. But when one's parent is no longer with us, then the flip side of the equation is true. The other side of the coin. Then instead of Lo Yeshev B'Mkomo, it's Yeshev B'Mkomo. At that point, we must step up to the plate and we must take the place of our parents. So whatever it may have been that our mother, that our father brought to the world, that's what we must continue bringing to the world. And in that way, they live on. On one hand, Ish imo va'aviv tira'u lo yeshev bimkomo. But on the other hand, when our parents are no longer here, and we still must show them morah, the morah that we show them is that we carry on for them. And we continue to bring to our families, to OUisrael, and to the entire world what they contributed as well. And so again, to, if I may dare, to all of the families that are suffering in some way, have suffered, be it on October 7th, be it families of Chayalim and others that have given, and unfortunately the reality is, and we can state this unfortunately and sadly with 100% certainty, that there will be more continuing to give their lives Lema'an ha'am va'aretz until this dastardly war, which we have no choice but to fight, comes to an end. To them, we say, with heartfelt feelings, HaMakom Yinachem Etchem. Knowing that you now have the privilege and the opportunity to sit in the place of those dear ones that you lost. Knowing that you have a charge, that you have a mission. But again, coming at it, if I may, from the angle of a privilege and an opportunity to bring to the world what they brought to the world, or if they died when they were so young, as so many did, and never had a chance to really contribute much to the world, may you contribute to the world on their behalf. And whatever you envision and envision now, that perhaps they would have amounted to, and what they would have done to contribute, you now have the opportunity and the privilege to contribute in their memory. And we all do. We all have the responsibility, we all have the privilege and the opportunity to bring to the world what our parents did on a micro level and on a macro level, meaning in terms of approaching this from a macro perspective, to engage in opportunities of chesed, to engage in opportunities of biyachad, of achdut, to do whatever we possibly can to literally yeshev b'makomo, to take the place of those that are no longer with us. And aside from the Avel, the mourning aspect, even to take the place of those that are literally right now serving the Am and the Aretz, or their families who are busy taking care of their children because their husbands or their other spouse, their wives are off in Miluim, whatever it may be, and therefore they are no longer, or at least temporarily, they are not able to tend to their normal course of business, then therefore it is we that go out to the fields to pick. Or, in my case, I'm guilty of that. I have not yet had the opportunity to go literally picking produce as my son did last week, and so many of us are doing, at the same time, purchasing if we can, in order to support those that otherwise would be losing the money. When I heard yesterday that literally just a 20-minute walk from me, the Karliner Rebbe basically commanded, he gave it tzav to all of his Hasidim that are able to take off a day. I'm not sure if it was just a day or more, but to take a day, and they went yesterday, I believe, just to go to the fields and to volunteer to pick produce, because Am Yisrael needs you. And if that's the way you can contribute, then that's how you should contribute. And all of those in communities, Haredim and otherwise, that normally would not even give a second thought to enlisting in the army and are now doing so, it's simply mind-boggling to observe it. And that, just picking up from where Rav Soloveitchik left off, if I may, is perhaps the greatest manifestation of HaMakom in this particular case, of taking the place of all those who no longer can do so or temporarily cannot do so, to step up to the plate and to be there for them and to be there for Am Yisrael. These two insights of Rav Soloveitchik to the usage of HaMakom, may this alone bring us nechama. HaMakom in the sense of just knowing that God is out there someplace. HaMakom in the sense of when the need arises for us to step up to the plate and to take the HaMakom, to take the place of those that are no longer with us, and to bring their best to the world through us. There perhaps is no greater nechama that we can provide for ourselves and that we can provide for Am Yisrael and for the entire world. And just to close with where we began, we recite the words HaMakom, the word HaMakom, in Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael, when we are thinking of them, at the home of Avelim, as we are taking leave, and also in the Haggadah, because the Haggadah was written for the Galut mindset, for the Galut Jew, and again, it's for a different time. May we ourselves take comfort in the fact that we know, number one, that God is out there someplace, and number two, that we who do have the opportunity bring HaMakom into this world, that we do indeed take the place and step up to the plate. I know I keep using that metaphor and I apologize, but to take the place of those who cannot do so and who unfortunately will no longer be able to do so. May that bring us nechama, and may that thought and these ideas provide nechama to all of Am Yisrael, to all those that are in need.